Carson stopped mid-monologue. The entire studio froze. For 30 years, nothing had broken Johnny Carson's composure on live television. Not hecklers, not technical failures, not even the time a tiger escaped during a zoo segment. But on this particular Tuesday night in October 1985, something happened that would leave 30 million viewers witnessing the most vulnerable moment in late-night television history. It started like any other Tonight Show. Carson walked through the rainbow curtain to thunderous applause, delivered his opening monologue with trademark timing, and settled behind his wooden desk for what should have been a routine audience Q&A segment. What happened next would change everything we thought we knew about the man behind America's favorite late-night show. But to understand how we got there, we need to go back to earlier that evening, when a shy 8-year-old boy named Michael sat in Studio One at NBC Burbank, clutching his mother's hand and holding a secret that would soon bring the king of late night to tears. The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson had been America's bedtime ritual for over 2 decades. Every weeknight at 11:30, Carson would emerge from behind those iconic curtains, delivering laughs with surgical precision while maintaining the perfect balance of warmth and professional distance. He was the master of controlled spontaneity. Everything felt natural, but nothing was left to chance. That October evening started no differently. Carson breezed through his monologue, landing every punchline with the effortless timing that had made him television royalty. Doc Severinsen's band provided the perfect musical punctuation, and Ed McMahon offered his reliable support from the sidelines. The machine was running smoothly. During the commercial break, Carson noticed something unusual in the studio audience. In the third row, a small boy sat unnaturally still while everyone around him chatted and laughed. The child's mother leaned down occasionally to whisper something in his ear, but he remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the stage with an intensity that seemed almost unnatural for someone his age. Carson had developed a sixth sense about his audience over the years. He could spot the tourists, the regulars, the industry plants, and the genuine fans within seconds. But this boy was different. There was something in his stillness that caught Carson's attention. A gravity that didn't belong in a comedy show audience. When they returned from break, Carson decided to do something he rarely did anymore, an impromptu audience interaction. "You know what? I think we should meet some of our wonderful audience tonight," he announced, stepping away from his desk. The audience erupted in excited murmurs, cameras swung toward the crowd, and suddenly the controlled environment of The Tonight Show became unpredictably live. Carson worked the crowd with his usual charm, exchanging jokes with a tourist from Ohio, complimenting a woman's dress, asking an elderly man about his retirement. The audience ate it up, but Carson's eyes kept drifting back to that quiet boy in the third row. Carson stopped mid-conversation with a woman from Detroit. Something about that child's stillness was pulling him like a magnet. As Carson moved closer to the third row, the boy's mother gently nudged her son, whispering something urgent in his ear. The child shook his head almost imperceptibly, but his mother persisted. Carson, with his practiced television intuition, sensed a story brewing. "And what about our young friend here?" Carson said, crouching down to the boy's eye level. The studio cameras zoomed in, capturing the child's wide, nervous eyes. "What's your name, son?" The boy opened his mouth but no sound came out. His mother placed an encouraging hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, Michael. Tell Mr. Carson your name." "Michael," the boy whispered, his voice barely audible even with the boom mic positioned overhead. Carson smiled that genuine smile he reserved for children and animals. "Michael, that's a great name. Are you having fun at the show tonight?" Michael nodded, but something in his expression suggested this wasn't just a fun night out. There was purpose in his presence, a weight that seemed enormous for such small shoulders. "Michael wanted to tell you something," his mother said softly, her own voice beginning to tremble. "We came here tonight because, well, Michael has something important he wants to say." Carson's television instincts usually warned him away from unscripted emotional moments. They were unpredictable, potentially awkward, and could derail the show's carefully maintained energy. But something about this moment felt different. He knelt down fully, bringing himself to Michael's height. "What did you want to tell me, Michael?" The boy looked at his mother, who nodded encouragingly. Then he looked back at Carson, took a deep breath, and spoke words that would echo through television history. "My daddy loved watching you," Michael said, his small voice growing stronger. "He watched you every night before he got sick. He said you made him laugh even when he hurt really bad." The studio fell into absolute silence. Carson's smile remained, but something shifted in his eyes, a recognition, a connection, an understanding of where this was heading. "Your daddy sounds like a wonderful man," Carson said gently. "What was his name?" Michael's eyes filled with tears, but he managed to speak clearly. "His name was Robert. Robert Patterson. He died last month." The camera captured the exact moment Johnny Carson's legendary composure cracked. His eyes immediately welled up with tears, and for the first time in 30 years of live television, Carson was completely, utterly speechless. The man who had navigated every possible scenario, celebrity meltdowns, technical disasters, political controversies, found himself undone by a grieving 8-year-old's simple tribute to his father. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 seconds. 30 million people watched as America's most professional entertainer became just a man, moved beyond words by a child's love for his deceased father. Carson reached out and gently took Michael's hand. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Robert Patterson. That's a beautiful name for what sounds like a beautiful man." Michael nodded, tears now flowing freely down his cheeks. "He always said if he ever met you, he'd want to shake your hand and say thank you for all the laughs." Without hesitation, Carson extended his hand to the boy. "Well then, Michael, this handshake is from your daddy to me, and from me to him. Consider it delivered." As their hands met, the studio erupted in the kind of spontaneous applause that can't be manufactured or directed. It started with a few scattered claps but quickly built into a standing ovation that lasted nearly 2 minutes. Doc Severinsen, watching from the bandstand, quietly wiped his own eyes. Ed McMahon, the consummate professional, found himself struggling to maintain his composure. But Carson wasn't done. Still holding Michael's hand, he stood up and addressed the entire studio audience and the millions watching at home. "You know, folks, we do a lot of silly things on this show. We tell jokes, we laugh at ourselves, we try to help people forget about their troubles for a little while. But every once in a while, something happens that reminds us why we're really here." He paused, his voice gaining strength. "We're here because laughter is healing. We're here because sometimes a smile can make the difference between a bearable day and an unbearable one. And we're here because people like Robert Patterson trusted us to be part of their family every night. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead." Carson then did something that broke every rule of television production. He invited Michael and his mother onto the stage, abandoning the rest of his planned show. For the next 15 minutes, with millions watching, Carson sat with this grieving family and talked about Robert Patterson, his love of baseball, his job as a high school teacher, his sense of humor, and his battle with cancer. The cameras stayed tight on Carson's desk, where he had Michael help him with the nightly top 10 list, dedicating it to teachers everywhere who make kids laugh, especially Robert Patterson of Phoenix, Arizona. The boy giggled at Carson's jokes, and with each laugh, the healing power of humor became visible to everyone watching. Backstage, NBC executives were frantically trying to figure out what to do. The show was running long, commercial breaks were being extended, and the carefully choreographed late-night television schedule was completely derailed. But not one person in the studio, not the crew, not the band, not even the notoriously impatient network suits, wanted to interrupt what was happening. But this was the moment no one in the studio, nor anyone at home, ever saw coming. As the show neared its end, Carson walked over to his desk and pulled out a piece of paper. One of his famous cue cards. He wrote something on it and handed it to Michael. "This is for you to keep," Carson said. It's got a very special message. Michael looked at the card, his young eyes widening. In Carson's distinctive handwriting were the words, "Robert Patterson, a loving father, a dedicated teacher, and a loyal Tonight Show viewer. Never forgotten." The boy clutched the card to his chest as Carson walked him and his mother to the edge of the stage. Just before they disappeared behind the curtain, Carson called out, "Michael! You come back and see us anytime, okay? You're part of the Tonight Show family now." As Carson returned to his desk for the final segment, he was visibly different. The professional mask had slipped just enough to reveal the man underneath, someone genuinely moved by human connection and the power of shared grief transformed into shared healing. The show ended not with Carson's usual flourish, but with a quiet moment of reflection. As the credits rolled and the audience filed out, many wiping away tears, Carson remained at his desk, staring at the rainbow curtain where Michael had disappeared. Later, Ed McMahon would say it was the most powerful television he'd ever been part of. Doc Severinsen called it the night Johnny became human on camera. But Carson himself never spoke publicly about the moment, maintaining his characteristic privacy about personal matters. What happened after the cameras stopped rolling became part of Tonight Show legend. Carson personally ensured that Michael and his mother were taken care of for their remaining time in Los Angeles. He arranged for them to visit other NBC shows, had dinner sent to their hotel, and gave them a behind-the-scenes tour of the studios. More importantly, Carson stayed in touch with Michael's family. For years afterward, he would send birthday cards and Christmas presents. When Michael graduated from high school, there was a handwritten note from Carson among his cards. When he graduated from college, following in his father's footsteps to become a teacher, Carson was among the first to congratulate him. The cue card that Carson had given Michael that night became a treasured family heirloom. Michael's mother had it framed, and it hung in their living room for decades. But the real impact wasn't in the keepsake. It was in the lesson that a master entertainer had taught about the true purpose of comedy. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. In the days following the broadcast, NBC received thousands of letters from viewers who had been moved by the moment. Many shared their own stories of loss and how laughter had helped them heal. The network, recognizing they had captured something special, preserved the complete footage of that night's show in their archives. Years later, when Carson announced his retirement from The Tonight Show, many retrospectives would feature clips from that October night in 1985. Not because it was his funniest moment, or his most clever, but because it represented what made Carson truly great, his ability to recognize when being human mattered more than being perfect. The moment also changed how Carson approached his show. While he remained the consummate professional, colleagues noticed he became more open to genuine spontaneity, more willing to let unscripted emotions play out naturally. He had learned that some of television's most powerful moments happen when you stop performing and start connecting. Michael Patterson grew up to become the high school history teacher his father had been. In his classroom, he keeps a photo from that night. The moment when a shy 8-year-old boy's love for his father moved the most famous man on television to tears. He tells his students that laughter isn't just entertainment, it's medicine, connection, and sometimes, the bridge between grief and healing. The Tonight Show stage where that moment happened has been rebuilt and reconfigured countless times over the decades. Different hosts have occupied Carson's chair. New bands have filled the stage, and millions of new guests have walked through those rainbow curtains. But ask any NBC veteran who worked that night in 1985, and they'll tell you that some moments transcend the physical space where they happen. Carson's legacy isn't just in the jokes he told, or the careers he launched. It's in moments like that October night when he showed an entire generation of entertainers that sometimes the best thing you can do is stop entertaining and start caring. That cue card still exists today, carefully preserved in Michael's home. But the real treasure isn't the paper, it's the lesson that when someone trusts you with their pain, the greatest gift you can give them isn't laughter. It's your tears.